Here's the bottom line. When it comes to the Islamic Republic, there is, as has been said today, a viable alternative to the clerical regime in Iran. But we need to keep it real. Not all opposition movements are created equal, and the international community must distinguish between those with deep roots, those with operational capacity, and those with genuine support inside the country, and those built on nostalgia and name recognition and simple media visibility. One such distraction receiving media attention this summer is the monarchist camp led by Reza Pahlavi. His prominence is quite simply a legacy of his father's rule, not the result of any sustained contribution to Iran's democratic struggle. Over the past 4 decades, he hasn't built a movement. He hasn't established a party or earned any credibility for establishing a political structure. His interventions are largely episodic, and his strategy is mostly undefined. And his base, which is largely external to the country and symbolic, lacks traction among the Iranian people. The truth is, Iranians haven't forgotten the repression of the Shah's era, his secret police, or the autocratic system that silenced dissent. The legacy that helped create the conditions for the Ayatollahs to hijack the '79 revolution are found in that era. And so Western authorities must not make the same mistake again by legitimizing figures who lack both moral credibility and operational relevance. Reza Pahlavi's past statements, for example, about the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the very force responsible for mass murder inside and outside Iran, are not just naive, they're dangerous. This is a US designated terrorist organization. And this is a man who said that it should have a role to play in a democratic Iran. This is absurd and it's offensive to the many victims of its violence. US officials need to understand that this is not a time for weekend warriors or figureheads. Iran's future will not be secured by those who parachute in during moments of crisis. It will ultimately be secured by those who spent decades organizing and resisting and preparing for this democratic transition. I've spent now 2 decades examining and writing about the Iranian opposition broadly construed. And there's one such movement that, from my perspective, stands above all the others. And that's the National Council of Resistance of Iran, or the NCRI. The NCRI is a broad-based coalition with the MEK, its largest constituent group, at its core. And as a political body with a defined structure, a plan for governance, and a leadership team ready to step in, the NCRI is structured to serve as a transitional government in the immediate aftermath of the regime's collapse. At the helm of this coalition is a president-elect, Maryam Rajavi, a Muslim woman who embodies both the modernity and the moderation that the Iranian people have long been denied. She's put forward, as has been described here today, a 10-point plan, a roadmap, if you will, that lays out the principles that would guide Iran through a democratic transition. Thousands of Western lawmakers across North America and Europe have already endorsed this plan and have done so since its inception almost 2 decades ago. So the fact of the matter is, the Iranian resistance is far more prepared to govern than many realize. Unlike spontaneous protest movements that arise without direction, or those that only hold forth in the media, the NCRI has a clearly articulated framework for transition. Its plans call for the establishment of a transitional government, limited to just 6 months, whose sole mandate is to organize free and fair elections for a constituent assembly. That body would then be responsible for drafting a new constitution and forming a representative government based on the will of the Iranian people. In other words, the model is structured to ensure a peaceful democratic transition without chaos or power vacuums. And the democratic principles that have been set forth to guide the transition align very, very well with international norms and human rights commitments. Take, for example, ballot box legitimacy as the exclusive source of political authority, gender equality with full rights for women in political, social, and economic life, autonomy for Iran's ethnic minorities, religious freedom with equal rights for Shia, Sunnis, Jews, Christians, Baha'is, and others in Iran, separation of religion and state characterized by a secular government that reflects pluralism and not religious tyranny. And very importantly, Mark, a foreign policy rooted in peace, including a non-nuclear Iran committed to regional stability. So to your question, yes, the Iranian resistance is prepared not just to fill the vacuum, but to guide the country toward a democratic order that reflects the aspirations of its people. What the international community must recognize at this crucial moment is that this movement is not only ready, it's reliable, it's responsible, and it's rooted in values that deserve our support. But this is not just a moral imperative. It's a matter of strategic international urgency, because a democratic Iran is essential to global security, regional stability, and the long-term interests of the West. From my perspective, what's needed now is a unified stance from Western democracies, one that acknowledges a simple but powerful truth. The Iranian people not only seek change, but they today have the leadership, the vision, and the organizational capacity to achieve it.